Hello, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Yay, let's go. Or not. We're going to start with the news that affects your money. This is the headlines that really should be getting more attention. I understand there's not like a sexy angle to this. There's no flipping puppy dogs or pretty girls or anything salacious in this. But this is the stuff that affects your wallet, your pocketbook. Does it get more important than that? It shouldn't. And so you heard some of the rundown there in the top of the hour news, but let me expand on that because the stock market's actually having a great day today. Stock market's going up, and it's not taking off like a rocket ship, but it's interesting to see how it reacts to yesterday's number. On top of that, it's a new month, so it's a great start to May. But I guess they weren't too shook by yesterday's negative GDP number. If you missed yesterday's show, we have the numbers come in for the first quarter GDP growth, gross domestic product growth, and it was negative, but it was 0.3, so not a whole lot, and not anything giant, big, or down. It's kind of treading water here, and that's not too far out of expectations, even for the optimists out there. There's a lot of transition and a lot of changes that happen in that first quarter from January to March. I think the more interesting number is going to see what happens with the second quarter because it includes April. When the tariff started, when the downturn started, we went into correction territory, I guess almost bear territory in the NASDAQ. But we're already bouncing back from that, and we're recovered most of it. But apparently, no, they weren't too shocked by yesterday's GDP number. Maybe that was already priced in. I mean, that's one of the obvious things you can infer from that. You heard in the top of the hour news break, GM said they're going to eat the cost of tariffs, and the number she said was $4 to $5 billion. So yeah, $5 billion's on the high end. But I think that's an interesting take because that was from Mary Barra. She's the CEO of GM. She was on Maria Bartiromo's show this morning. Watched the whole 13 minutes. And, I have a little bit more nuanced takeaway from that. GM, are you really planning on just eating up to $5 billion in costs and not passing it down or raising your prices or making any cutbacks? Or do you expect this tariff stuff to be resolved fairly soon and you don't want to make any moves because if tariffs go away next week and you've already raised your prices, what are you going to have to do, lower them again? And so then you look like a fool. No, I think this is a person who doesn't expect the tariff issue to remain in place for over the year, probably for over the next 6 months. You would not voluntarily go into a bandsaw of a $5 billion loss face first like this if you thought that's how it was really going to work out. And if you did, you might be unseated by your shareholders coming up in the next meeting. But that's interesting. Another one that I like to watch this kind of under the radar here. This is a good bellwether of the economy. Americans are spending less on fast food. Now, McDonald's had to announce their earnings yesterday. They did the conference call, and the spokesman from McDonald's, what was this guy's name? He had a wild name, Kipzinski. He said they're down 1% in the first quarter, McDonald's. But check this out. If you break it down by the poorest among us, they call them low-income consumers, they were down nearly double digits. Middle-income fast food eaters were down nearly as much. However, traffic growth from the high-income consumers was up. So that's a great way to tell you how people are really processing the economy. If poor people are like, I can't even afford McDonald's, I better just eat out the house. It's the difference between going to Jack in the Box and eating a ham sandwich out of your own kitchen. But for rich people, high-income consumers, they have a different choice. They're like, am I going to go to a nice sit-down restaurant with a cloth, with tablecloths, and the guy comes out and he brings the wine? Am I going to go to a place that has the special scoopers for my breadcrumbs before my meal gets there? That's when you know you're... Garrett, have you ever even been to the restaurant with the breadcrumb scoopers? Because I didn't go to one of those until I was like 29. Maybe a long time ago. Yeah, you hadn't got the bill for one of those. So they go from the breadcrumb scooper high end. They're like, you know what? I'm just going to Just going to bite the bullet and go get some Whataburger or Taco Cabana or something like that. So you can see people's expectation, even though we haven't had mass layoffs, even though unemployment is about where it's been this entire time, people are adjusting their behaviors. And this is where it shows up, whether you actually have the firings or not. So I think that's a great look. People are uncertain. They're changing their behaviors. They're kind of buckling down. And that doesn't necessarily mean the economy's bad. But that does mean a lot of people think the economy could be bad sometime in the near future. Now, mortgage rates are a bright spot. They've fallen for 2 straight weeks. But the bigger part of this is they've kind of been on a downward trend since about a year ago. Right now, the 30-year fixed mortgage, as of yesterday, fell to 6.76, according to Freddie Mac. The important number is that a year ago, the exact same 30-year loan was 7.22%. Doesn't sound like a big change here, but depending on the size of your house, that could be a couple $100 a month off of your mortgage payment. So these are some big changes. We also have some fantastic or promising sounding updates on a mineral deal between the U.S. and Ukraine. Also, Russia and Ukraine sound like these kids are about ready to settle down and figure it out. The tariff exemptions that have been sort of scalpeled into the current regime have a lot of people feeling a little bit better, especially about high ticket items, airplanes, cars, things like that. But a guy who's going to help me break it down even further and let you know about all the headlines and stories that are affecting your money right now, EJ Antoni from the Heritage Foundation is going to join us in the next segment and continue talking about the headlines that affect your pocketbook. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, homeowners, I know you got some rain yesterday. If you're worried about your roof in any capacity, go ahead and get the free inspection from Blue Ribbon Roofing. James Parker here for Blue Ribbon Roofing. I've told you to go to blueribbondfw.com, and you didn't do it, did you? Well, I've told you to go read some of the hundreds of 5-star Google reviews that they have. You didn't do that either. So I'm going to bring it to you. I'm going to do some of the heavy lifting for you. This is just an example. This comes from a guy named Mark who left a 5-star review on Google, and it says, Blue Ribbon Roofing is an amazing company. In this day and age, it is so hard to find a company who operates with transparency. They did a beautiful job without cutting any corners. They tell you what they are going to do, and they do exactly what they say they are going to do. John and Trevor felt like partners in repairing my roof. They responded to my initial inquiry. Within a few hours, John met me the same day, and I had a completely new roof 2 days later. I highly recommend them. This thing that's hanging over your head, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a pain in the butt. It doesn't have to take a long time. You have an example here, and maybe it won't take, you can get it done in 2 days, but sometimes it does. So go to blueribbondfw.com. To have a great experience like Mark had, go to blueribbondfw.com. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, I knew we were going to have EJ Antoni from the Heritage Foundation on the show today, so I started typing out questions that I would like to ask him. You know, he's the economic guru over there. And my list is so long, I don't think we can squeeze it into 2 segments, so let's just run right into it. Welcome back, EJ Antoni. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Let's do rapid fire. Here we go. Let's get through them all.
Okay, first, stock market seems to be having a good day. Good start to May. I guess they weren't too shook by yesterday's negative GDP number, EJ.
No, exactly. And not only that, but there's so much of what these companies are going to earn in the future, which is what justifies their stock price. So much of that is still left to be decided until this 90-day pause is expired. So, we basically are in a holding pattern right now. Markets are looking for direction, and a lot of this economic data we're getting right now is very noisy because of the tariff fight. In other words, it's not sending a clear indication of whether the economy is going up or down in the first place. So it's not like you can make definitive moves today in terms of your portfolio.
Well, and that's the thing I've been stressing. It's so hard on radio. You have a tendency to want to say everything's great or everything's terrible or this is the best in the world or this is the worst in the world. And it's been really hard to come out here and try and be opinionated on nobody really knows what this is going to look like in 6 months or even 3 months.
That's exactly right. I mean, nobody knows what it's going to be like in 3 weeks, let alone 3 months. Look at where the market was just a couple of weeks ago compared to where it is today. I mean, April was one of the most volatile months on record. A lot of that was because they rolled out the tariffs in frankly, a very botched way. It did not have to be that bad. But whatever the case, they are well on their way to correcting it, I think, and to getting some good trade deals signed for the U.S. It looks like we'll probably get a deal inked with India if they can stay out of war with Pakistan sometime in the next week or two. So that's a very, very positive development. Same thing with Japan. We're getting closer to a deal with them. I would not be surprised if Australia is the next domino to fall after that.
Well, look, even if we do get some good announcements in the next month or so, we're a good third of the way through the second quarter. And if this comes back as a negative GDP number, we will click the layman's definition of a recession. So EJ Antoni, Heritage Foundation, are we in a recession right now and we just don't know it?
Well, okay, let's distinguish between a recession on paper and an actual recession. In other words, the difference between the rhetoric and the reality. If we polled people during the Biden administration, especially the second half, do you think the economy's in recession? More than half of the folks would routinely say yes. And the reason was that their own personal financial situation was going backwards. It was receding, hence recession. If you look at how much could the average American family actually buy with their weekly paycheck, for instance, that declined. It dropped about 4% over the course of the Biden administration. So again, if you want to talk about how are people actually doing, that's what I really care about. How are Americans doing? What can they actually buy with their incomes? Those figures are pretty lousy. By that metric, we've been in recession for quite a while. And let's not forget that during the Biden administration was the first half of 2022, they had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, and they simply said, "Oh no, we're still adding jobs, so it's not a recession." Okay, so apparently these definitions don't mean anything anymore.
Right.
And again, what I'm really ultimately concerned about is how is the average American actually doing? What is their standard of living and what is their cost of living? That's what I want to see improved. And whatever the so-called official metrics say, other than that, I don't really care at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, right before you came on the show, I was trying to illustrate that with another piece of news that came out this morning, or no, yesterday. McDonald's said they had a 1% dip in their first quarter revenue. And so they were saying that lower income people and middle income people are going out to eat less at fast food, but higher income people are eating more fast food because it's a cheaper alternative to the more expensive options here. So I think a lot of people are already making adjustments, even though the numbers haven't really gone that haywire. I think a lot of people are expecting things to be worse than they are.
Right. And the other thing to remember is that so much of what was done during the Biden administration was artificially increasing these different economic metrics, things like GDP or the jobs numbers. So when the government goes out and spends a ton of money, what does that do to GDP? It makes it skyrocket. That's what happened under Biden. And same thing when the government goes out and hires a bunch of people to do useless work in quotes there. What happens to the jobs numbers? Well, they look great because you're adding all these jobs. Now, you're not adding anything productive to the private sector of the economy. You're just adding bureaucratic bloat, but it makes the statistics look good. So as Trump reduces government spending, which is what happened in the first quarter, not only did the growth of government spending stop, but government spending actually went down in the first quarter. Well, that drags down GDP. Likewise, they've been laying off workers, especially at the federal level. What is that doing to the jobs numbers? It's reducing them as well. So what the kinds of economic sugar highs that the Biden administration kept producing for us for 4 years are all being undone. And you might say, as we start to sober up, that's the path to health now, but it is going to make some of these numbers look bad, at least in the short run.
Yeah, it's like when your Red Bull wears off. But you had mentioned the deficit and the debt. I was under the impression they had extended the exact same spending levels under Biden's last continuing resolution through this new continuing resolution, and that's going to keep them at that level until the end of September, end of the fiscal year. Are we actually going to see a reduction in the deficit?
Well, we're actually already seeing it. In the first quarter, they managed to save billions of dollars almost exclusively because of DOGE. I think they literally accounted for like 99% of the savings that the Trump administration was able to identify in their first 3 months. Well, really their first 2.5 months.
Well, hang on. EJ Antoni from Heritage Foundation. I was under the impression that would have to be codified into law by congressional action, and those checks have already been written and that money's already been spent.
It depends entirely on which specific ones we're talking about. In certain cases, they essentially, the government is, this sounds stupid, but the government is actually required to spend money on certain things unless Congress changes a previous law, even if the government, let's say, can complete a project for less. But in other instances, DOGE has been able to actually claw back some money, whether it had already gone out the door or at least stop money before it went out the door. And in those specific instances where you did not require any kind of congressional approval, there has just been pure savings.
All right, EJ Antoni, when we get back, I want to play you a clip from Mary Barra, the GM CEO. But the ultimate question is the price of our cars about to get more expensive? Because when they did the blanket tariffs, the easy answer to that was, well, if they stay on, then yes. But we've gotten so many carve-outs and so many exceptions that it's kind of muddied the picture. And then you have Mary Barra saying, nah, we're just going to eat the difference. I'm going to ask EJ Antoni from the Heritage Foundation next, and you'll hear his answer. Are your cars going to be more expensive in the near term? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We continue with my guest, EJ Antoni from the Heritage Foundation. But if you're just joining us, this is a great day where you want to go back and check out the podcast, because I ran through all the economic news. I just focused on the headlines that are affecting your wallet right now. And then we're going through it in greater detail with EJ from the Heritage Foundation. So this is a heck of a show. I really feel for you if you missed the first half hour. Go check it out on the podcast. Now, continuing with EJ Antoni. Thank you for sticking with us for another segment here. I don't mean to take up half your day, but I want to look at sort of monetary policy here, because we had ended the last talk about the deficit, which really my big concern, and the reason I focus on that so much, is I find that to be sort of the ground zero for inflation. We are not going to get inflation under control if we can't get the deficit under control. And I don't hear a whole lot of people worried about inflation in DC.
Oh, goodness, I couldn't agree with you more. But see, this is where I was so glad to see the latest inflation numbers from the month of March, because although we had really bad inflation at the start of the first quarter, by the end of the quarter, inflation had gone away. It was literally down to zero. Now, that doesn't mean all of a sudden prices have dropped back down. It just means they've stopped going up. But that's the first step to actually getting them to eventually go back down. Now, to do that, you're going to need, tighter monetary policy. You're going to need an explosion of energy production. You're going to need permitting reform to make all that happen. And yes, absolutely, you're going to need spending cuts on the part of the government. Fortunately, we're already getting all of that. Maybe not as much as we need to, but we are at least getting it to some degree. Again, like we mentioned in the first segment, government spending actually fell in the first quarter, and that's one of the things that helped drag down the headline GDP number. So as we get the government spending down, that in turn is going to reduce the borrowing. As we grow the economy faster, we get more tax revenue. That also reduces borrowing. All of this helps put downward pressure on inflation, and then throw in all of the increase in supply that you will get from these supply side policies, again, especially increased energy production. All of that puts downward pressure on prices. You're eventually going to see not just prices stop rising, but prices falling.
Wow, that sounds like it would have to be a long ways away, and a few other things, dominoes to fall before that happens. But, no one's really going out there buying the 10-year treasury. I think the way this trickles down and would affect most of the people listening is if we can get inflation under control, then you can have the Fed lower rates without inflation raging, and that could mean your mortgage rates will continue to go down, because they're down for the second straight week, down to 6.76 when they were 7.22 a year ago. So I think a lot of people have sat on the sidelines in the housing market because of these higher rates. And if we see that go down, there's a whole nother incentive for an economic boom.
Right. And the really crazy thing is, to your point on how many people are sitting on the sidelines, new home sales have just absolutely plummeted. Nobody can afford a home anymore. And it's getting to the point where you're starting to see inventory build up. And normally that's fine, because then prices just come down. The problem today is that the builders can't lower their prices because their costs are at a record high. They have to sell these homes at these high prices in order to make up all of those extra costs. And so they're willing to sit on the inventory, unfortunately, for a very long time, because they would rather essentially try to wait and find a buyer than take a loss today. So it's a very tough situation. It's not good all around. And you're right, we got to get the spending down to get the borrowing down, because reducing the borrowing puts downward pressure on that 10-year Treasury note, on the yield, I should say. And that is going to help reduce interest rates throughout the economy, regardless of what the Fed does.
Right. Your mortgage payment will be lower. Your car payment will be lower. You may even get a little bit of a break on some of your credit card rates. But, that's the trade-off. Lower interest rates also mean you get lower returns when you're investing, especially in the fixed world.
Oh, certainly. But here's the thing. If you couple those lower interest rates also with a reduction in inflation, you make out okay. What we've seen for the last several years, and what we had under Biden, was the worst 3.5-year run of the bond market in terms of real returns in at least 100 years. Think of that. We haven't seen bonds get that beat up in over a century. But when you had a very rise not only in inflation rates, but also a very fast rise in interest rates too, it crushed all of the folks who were holding those low interest rate securities as prices went up so quickly.
So let's circle back to the first question I asked when you started in the last segment. We were going in with the mindset, are we in a recession and we just don't know it yet? I think you spelled out a lot of good reasons why the answer should be no, but everything we're answering here comes with an asterisk because it really depends on how the people on the other side of this tariff tiff are going to respond or how long they're going to take to respond.
Exactly right. Look, as soon as you introduce these kinds of bilateral negotiations, you're introducing another element of uncertainty. There was enough uncertainty to begin with when we weren't sure exactly what Trump was going to do. But now that he's done it, now there's uncertainty in terms of how are other nations going to respond. And something that you talked about earlier with with the automotive sector, right, and the fact that we're seeing all of these different exemptions, that speaks, I think, to how chaotic the rollout of these tariffs were. That they didn't put enough thought into the whole process. That they weren't looking at the parts, the components that go into final products, for example, and seeing how is that going to affect the whole mix? How is that going to affect the consumer? And so now they're having to basically build the train as they go down the tracks, and they're having to try to walk back a lot of these different provisions and create those exemptions.
Man, EJ Antoni Heritage Foundation, on days like this, I wish I worked at Fox Business. You know, they have so much to talk about, and usually it's not that the cool channel you want to be on. But in a time like this, with all the whirlwind that's been going on in the economy, what a fun job they have.
Well, I should be on with Larry Kudlow, I think at 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central. So you can catch me there, unless people are listening to you, in which case, they should stay with you, obviously.
Oh, yes, of course. Now, you know what? I'll have you on in the studio here. I have it on Fox Business and Fox News right now. EJ Antoni, Heritage Foundation. Good chat. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up next, this is going to be a fun one. Kamala Harris had her first public speech since losing the election. And after I play you a couple of clips, you're going to be so grateful she didn't win. You're going to hear what a bullet we dodged. Coming up next on The James Show. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. It's hard to believe that Kamala Harris came close to being our president. And it's not just because she skipped the whole primary process and nobody voted for her and she was just ordained to be president. It was that whole speech thing. It was the whole vapid, empty suit thing. And I think you have forgotten, even though it's only been 6 months since she was on the news on an almost daily basis. I think you've forgotten just how bad it was. Well, she came out and had her first big public appearance since losing the election, since that whole cycle died down. And it's even worse than you remember. Let me play you a couple of clips. Stick with me here. If you have any ice picks within reaching distance, go ahead and hide them or put them in a drawer or something so you don't poke out your ears with them. But here's Kamala Harris yesterday, and tell me what she's talking about here. Just guess.
But friends, please let us not be duped into thinking everything is chaos. I know it may feel that way, but understand what we are in fact witnessing is a high-velocity event.
What does that even mean?
Where a vessel is being used.
A vessel?
For the swift implementation of an agenda that has been decades in the making.
Tepid applause there. Is she reading a Mad Lib? Or was she trying to describe a situation that's happening in contemporary times? I mean, she just throws in a random noun. What we're dealing with is a vessel. Okay. This is a high velocity situation. What does that even mean? I don't know if it's a Mad Lib or she went to the Chinese buffet and something magic happens when the Parker family goes to the Chinese buffet, because there's 6 of us. I have 4 kids. So we get 6 fortune cookies. And if you smash them all at the same time and you line them up back to back and just read them in whatever order, that's kind of what it would sound like, right? Is this 6 fortune cookies strung together? Is this a Parker fortune cookie?
But friends, please let us not be duped into thinking everything is chaos.
That could be a fortune cookie.
I know it may feel that way, but understand what we are in fact witnessing is a high-velocity event.
That could be another fortune cookie.
Where a vessel is being used for the swift implementation.
I can't do it. All right, we'll go to the next one. She's adopted the constitutional crisis line. I'm not going to play the montage, but we have 400 people saying constitutional crisis, constitutional crisis, constitutional crisis, constitutional crisis. Got it.
We are living in a moment when the checks and balances upon which we have historically relied have begun to buckle. And we here know that when the checks and balances ultimately collapse, if Congress fails to do its part, or if the courts fail to do their part, or if both do their part, but the president defies them anyway, well, friends, that is called a constitutional crisis. And that is a crisis that will eventually impact everyone. Because it would mean that the rules that protect our fundamental rights and freedom.
All right, I can't do this. The thing that's really bothering me about the constitutional crisis, just the herd of lemmings that are just repeating constitutional crisis, is they never give you what part of the Constitution are we contravening. Oh, yeah, the checks and balances. Yeah, but I mean, Article 1, Section 8, the Third Amendment, what are you talking about? What is it, the necessary and proper clause, general welfare clause, the preamble, something? No, we just, orange man bad, constitutional crisis, threat to democracy. Okay, but what part of the Constitution? What are you citing there? Like if I was reffing a football game and I'd say, okay, well, I threw the flag. Yeah, we have a penalty there. What's the penalty for? Holding. There's a statute a penalty written in the rule books against holding. That's what it is. But for constitutional crisis, trust me. Your source, what's your source on that one? Trust me, bro. The one that's actually getting a lot of play here and being floated around, just because it's a silly metaphor, is the elephant one. You'll probably see this in your social media on X or Facebook or Instagram or whatever later today. I didn't find this very compelling just because it's another nothing.
Video from a couple of weeks ago, the one of the elephants at the San Diego Zoo during the earthquake. Google it if you've not seen it.
No, I'm not going to Google it. I'll take your word for it.
So that scene has been on my mind. Everybody's asking me what you've been thinking about these days. Well,
You been thinking about elephants? What are you laughing at?
so in the video, for those who haven't seen it,
She's laughing, but
here
there's no
those elephants
punchline.
were. And as soon as they felt the earth shaking beneath their feet, they got in a circle and
that
stood
funny?
next to each other
It's hilarious.
to protect the most vulnerable.
Oh, I got it.
Think about it. What a powerful metaphor.
Yeah, that's so powerful. The problem is you didn't say anything. It's like in Cheers.
Kevin Fogarty, City Council. I hope I have your vote on Election Day.
And why exactly should I vote for you, Mr. Fogarty?
Well, because I'm a hard worker, I take a stand.
On what exactly?
The issues of the day.
Which are?
The things that concern you and your family the most. I think you're making it out of yourself.
I am not. I simply want the councilman to say one concrete thing.
Yes, I understand. You don't trust me. A lot of people don't trust politicians. I know how it is. I have been out there.
What does that have to do
May
with...
I finish, please?
I've been out there.
Maybe we need someone to blame. Maybe if we pick some faceless person at City Hall to be responsible for all our problems, then we won't have to accept any responsibility at all. Well, people, I say now is the time to start looking in the mirror. Because if this thing is going to work, we are all going to have to make it work. The way a bunch of people made something work at Lexington and Concord. You may remember it. It's called America.
But he didn't say anything!
Oh, God, that's exactly how I felt when I was watching that for you. All right, coming up next, we're going to do another episode of What Did Jasmine Crockett Say This Time? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. There's two clips, and you're also going to get a bonus clip from Ilhan Omar. Coming up next on The James Show, I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hello, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I know, good to see you too. For our next segment, it's a new one to the show. It's just been around for a few months, but seems to get a lot of good feedback. It's What the Heck Did Jasmine Crockett Say This Time?
Jasmine Crockett, queen of the liberal tea.
Bleach blonde, bad built butch body. Governor Hot Wheels. And he is a hot ass mess, honey.
Queen of the liberal tea.
All right, so Jasmine Crockett has 2 entries in today's episode, and I'm actually going to throw in a little bonus, little lanyap for you Cajuns over there, of a clip from Ilhan Omar in today's episode. But let's go ahead and start off with the great Jasmine Crockett. She is the congressional representative from Dallas in the district I'm sitting in right now. Let's start off with Jasmine Crockett gave you her rundown on her thoughts on Trump's first 100 days. Of course, they were terrible, the worst ever, whatever, yada, yada, yada. But she gave you a nice, concise list of the top 5 worst things about Trump's first 100 days.
All right, y'all. So it's been 100 days since you know who has been officially sworn into office. And we need to do a quick recap on what he has done. And yeah, it ain't good. So here we go with the top 5 diabolical, disastrous, deplorable, detrimental, dumb decisions by Don.
Nice alliteration.
Number 1, mass deportations, including American citizens. Number 2, these ridiculous tariffs. And let me tell y'all, like even the kids know that this is dumb. And let's not forget about his bestie, Elon and Doge. The absolute destruction of checks and balances. And finally, not only cutting our federal services, but cutting our federal workforce. God bless each and every person that has dedicated so many years of service to this country as a federal worker. I see you. All right, so there you have it. Just 5 ways of this fool tearing up. Don't let anyone gaslight you. He's not just talking, he's doing. And we are truly watching our democracy unravel in real time.
All right, I didn't put all those edits in there. That was the way she edited her own video. So when you hear the gaps, that wasn't me, just to let you know. She was just doing 1 sentence at a time. And it kind of looks cool because it's jump cuts. But let's address this list. This is her top 5 worst of Trump's first 100 days. You tell me if you have a problem with this. Number 1, mass deportations. What's wrong with that? Now, she threw in there, of American citizens. I just love this lie because it's an impossible lie. You deported an American citizen? To where? Where would you deport a legal U.S. citizen to? If you return him to his home country, wouldn't that be America? Now, I love the obvious thing they're doing here, and you know this, you listen to WBAP, is they are conflating when a mom gets deported and she takes her citizen child with her voluntarily, even though she doesn't have to do it. She's the one who makes the decision to take that U.S. citizen back to her parents' home country of origin or whatever. So it's not like we are deporting them. Illegal immigrants are taking citizens with them when they get deported. And then number 2, tariffs. Now, there may be a legit criticism for tariffs in the economic philosophical sense, but she's not making it here. She's just tariffs. Tariffs are bad. Why? Because Donald Trump's doing them. You don't have to worry about why. Even if in 3 months we're going to find out that this led to fantastic new trade partnerships and better balance or open up all kinds of pathways for new U.S. opportunities. Now, it's just going to be bad because he did it. Number 3, the Doge cuts. What's wrong with Doge? What did Doge do wrong? Get rid of a bunch of waste and fraud and abuse? Maybe cut some of your friends' jobs, but that's the worst. Doge? Someone actually going through line by line the budget, cutting programs that don't work, cutting things that we don't need. That's what every president in your lifetime has said they want to do. I have clips of Biden saying it. I have clips of Obama saying it. Trump does it. Not just bad, worst thing in the world. Getting rid of the checks and balances, cutting federal workers, pretty much the same thing. Let's go back to the other clip from Jasmine Crockett today. Deporting randomly.
As far as I'm concerned, you randomly kidnapping folk and you throwing them out of the country against their civil rights, against their constitutional rights. And frankly, how would they feel if some other country decided that they were going to just start throwing people randomly in our country? Like that is absolutely insane. So yes, all I got to say is y'all need to get these fools out of here.
Okay, not only does she not believe it, I don't think anybody believes that. I don't think anybody is randomly being picked up off the street and being taken to some country that they have no association with. Does anybody believe that that's true for 1 second? Now, I know you could probably find some window lickers out there who believe, but Jasmine doesn't believe that. Anybody in a position of power or anybody in the media, I mean, if you're smart enough to be a news anchor and just at least read a teleprompter, you know that's not true. Just randomly picking people up and sending them to other countries. And then once you have that false premise, you can say, how would you feel if other countries were picking people up and sending them here randomly? Well, I wouldn't be that upset if they were picking up illegal immigrants who happen to be American citizens and return them to America. That'd be kind of the most normal thing in the world. And to finish off today's episode of What the Heck Did Jasmine Say this time, Ilhan Omar, everybody's favorite brother lover from Somalia, was asked by the Daily Caller, we going to have any more visits to go see Abrego Garcia in El Salvador? Because, the evidence keeps piling up. He's a gangster.
Congresswoman Omar, I'm Miles Morrell with the Daily Caller News Foundation. Do you think more of your Democratic colleagues should be traveling to El Salvador to advocate on behalf of Abrego Garcia?
I think you should off. Yeah, that's
I'm sorry, what, Congresswoman?
off.
Who should?
You.
Why me?
We're not taking any questions right now, but here you go.
Yeah, thanks.
I think you should bleep off. All right. I guess that's a no. I guess you got your answer. Just imagine if Republicans ran around doing that, just telling people in the press to F off. It's bad enough we get called fascists for calling them fake news. They're just sitting there, F off.
Jasmine Crockett, queen of the liberal tea.
Bleach blonde, bad built butch body, Governor Hot Wheels, and he is a hot ass mess, honey.
Queen of the liberal tea.
Coming up next on the James Show, I got a weird sort of love connection type request from an email. I don't think it's about you, but Daniel in Burleson wants to meet one of our other listeners, and I don't know. This is weird, but I think you're going to get a good kick out of it. Stick with me on the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I got quite a bit of feedback there from that last Ilhan Omar clip. You know, I played 2 Jasmine Crockett's, but Lisa over here said Ilhan Omar, I might as well just play it again because it's short, but Ilhan Omar told a reporter to F off from the Daily Caller. Twice she repeated herself, so it wasn't just an accident.
Congresswoman Omar, I'm Miles Morrell with the Daily Caller News Foundation. Do you think more of your Democratic colleagues should be traveling to El Salvador to advocate on behalf of Rodrigo Garcia?
I think you should off. Yeah, that's
I'm sorry, what, Congresswoman? Who should?
you.
Why me?
We're not taking any questions right now, but here you go.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, that's not very nice. I guess a lot of people agree that it's inappropriate for a congressman to be talking like that. Now, if they're off the mic and, you know, they're not making a public statement, you know, who cares if they cuss? But here's a little secret. Have you ever hung out with Congress people? Like, have you ever gone to D.C., go to a cigar bar that's on Pennsylvania Avenue, and then just listen to the people around you? Some of them cuss. Some of them don't. Some of them sort of do this little code switching thing, and they always act like they're being recorded. And some people have about 4 or 5 bourbons and just let it fly. So I don't think any of us are shocked that we have a grown adult in her 40s saying cuss words. Ugh. But I think a lot of us kind of do that little compartment in the back of our heads, knowing that if it was a Team Red member, or God forbid, Donald Trump did that, it would get a lot more of a reaction. And so I think that's where a lot of you feel sort of the unjust there. Not the fact that she said it. It's just another great example of who's the nice people, who's the empathetic people, who's the evil fascist, who's the vulgar, nasty people that want to tear everything down. You know, we always do this. I don't want to say we, but many people who are politically charged, probably not you, but the partisans out there, they're not just content to try and win the debate of on your ideas based on their merit. They have to destroy the person that's arguing against them. And not just the person that's standing in the room with them, but just all of them. And that kind of tribalism, sort of exhausting, isn't it? All right, let's go to a happier little story. By the way, you can keep the emails coming, james@wbap.com. But yeah, Yeah, Lisa said, well, glad our children can't hear that nasty mouth. Well, sometimes they will. But I got an email, and I got it on Tuesday. And it was a guy, Daniel from Burleson, writing in reference to the show on Monday. I'm just now getting around to this now because so much other stuff happened. But I thought you'd get a kick out of this. It says, "Hey, James. First, I want to say I really appreciate your show." Oh, thank you, Daniel. Great job. I'm not able to listen all the time, but I tune in when I can. Yesterday, I was able to catch the tail end of a caller at 440. I think he was Randy from Frisco. What caught my attention was that he's originally from Lawton, Oklahoma, and was originally a Democrat. Well, guess what? I'm originally from Lawton, Oklahoma, and was a pretty liberal Democrat. I first started the process of leaving them around 2007, and this is probably a really stupid question, but is there any way to contact this caller? I would love to visit with Randy, compare notes, so to speak. So here's the answer to that. Big fat no. God, dang it, Daniel. No, this is not the love connection. And I know this isn't like a guy trying to hook up with a girl. And something I don't share with you is how many times I do get calls from dudes. It's always one way. It's never a woman that wants to find a guy. But like Samantha in Dallas, she's one of the semi-regular callers. She has a real tiny voice, and she's always upbeat in a good mood, and she sounds so cutesy. And I've gotten about 4 offers. Hey, can you give me Samantha in Dallas? Can you hook me up with her? First off, even if I could, I don't know her number, but even if I could, no. I'm not going to be sending random dudes, some thirsty dude up to Denton to go harass one of my listeners. I don't know anything about you. So this one's weird, and the reason why I'm bringing this up on the show when I ignore all the other ones from dudes being creepers is this doesn't have the creeper level on it. This is a guy trying to hook up with it, or does it? I don't know. But there is a special interest that I have to hear people's stories about how they did the walk away, about how they transition, because it's an old trope, but it's very true. If you're young and liberal and not a liberal, you don't have a heart. If you're old and not a conservative, you don't have a brain. Haha, that's very funny. But there's a big kernel of truth to that. And the statistics bear it out in almost every election. Younger people skew liberal, older people skew conservative. So that means necessarily that there's a whole lot of people, as they get life experience, as they go through it, as they pay taxes and buy a house and have career issues, that they tend to transition. Well, that's a loaded word in 2025. But I'm interested in their transition from Democrat to Republican, because one of the hardest things it is to get any human being to admit is that they did something wrong. I mean, it starts with kids. You have kids? Did you have kids? Wasn't it impossible to get them to admit that they ever did anything wrong until a certain age? And that was a great sign of maturity for someone to say, well, you know what? Not only was I wrong, I've been wrong this entire time. Or, you know, a lot of them have different experiences. And I think most of them hinge around the fact that I just wasn't really paying attention that much. And then when I did start paying attention, when I did start reading, when I did start going through YouTube holes and reading holes and blogs and whatnot, I found out I didn't really know the subjects that well. And the better I learned about them, that sparked my transition. So I always love hearing those stories. But no, dude, no, I am not hooking up Daniel and Burleson with Randy from Frisco. We have social media. We have Facebook. We have Instagram. We have all kinds of tools at your disposal. No, I am not. Why? Because you're from Lawton, Oklahoma, and you both used to be Democrats? See, I think some of y'all just need a friend, and y'all need a like-minded friend. Either you've just done this natural thing that a lot of people do, and they grow increasingly isolated as they get older. Or I think a lot of you people who've gone through the transition have lost a lot of your friends. I think we all lost some friends during COVID. I think we've all lost some friends, whether they admit it or not, over this Trump hatred. He's a Nazi. He's literally Hitler. So that's one of the reasons I try and do the listener meet and greets. It's not just so you can meet me. It's so you people can meet each other. And if that's how we got to do it, that's fine. But this is what reminds me, I am looking for a place to do the next James Show listener meetup for May. I don't have a place picked out. I don't even have a city picked out or an area picked out. It's all up in the air. So if you know someone who owns a bar or a venue that could host this, or if they're a manager there, just someone that listens to WBAP, that's where I will start. That I'm not going to go to some place that doesn't know who we are, doesn't know WBAP. I'm not going to give them all kinds of promotion and business if they haven't showed us love first. So if you know anyone that owns a bar or runs a bar, or it could be a restaurant, just someplace with a meeting room that would like to host our next event, I would like to do it before the end of the month. I was thinking the week before Memorial Day. Just let me know, james@wbap.com, or you can find me. Facebook is what most people do, but I'm on Instagram, X, YouTube, all that good stuff as well. Coming up next, we have what the heck is going on in Jacksboro. Did you hear about this? Police chief's been arrested. An entire police force has been wiped out. Something must have really gone wrong. Details next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, hey there. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome back to the big show. Well, I was sharing some feedback from other listeners here, and one of the ladies that got a mention, Samantha in Dallas, has called in to respond, but I don't know which part you want to respond to. What has you calling in today, Samantha?
Man, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse. I just clicked on my radio, and there you are, denying me my husband's. I can't even believe it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. All right. So for people just joining us, Samantha, every once in a while when she calls in, because she's a semi-regular caller, we'll have some guy saying, hey, can I get Samantha's phone number? Or do you have contact info for Samantha or email or something? And look, I'm not gonna be the go-between, because what if it's a guy that ends up being terrible to you, Samantha?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I die, I'm blaming you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want that on my head. But you do you find that concerning, creepy, or is that sort of flattering that guys, based solely on hearing your voice, want to know more about you?
No, I don't think it's creepy. I don't assume people are weirdo stalkers or creep or anything like that. I mean, how do you meet anybody if you don't extend your hand, and take a risk or whatever? I think it's actually quite normal
to meet people meet strangers off the radio.
Yeah, I mean, what's the difference? You're out in public and somebody walks up to you and starts talking to you, and you don't know them from anyone.
Well, you know what? So let's do both sides of this. Number one, I say it's just your voice, but it's not just your voice. People can tell that you're kind of a positive person just from the last few statements you've had. But also, your political opinions are very attractive to guys who have been beat down. Like if you've ever dated someone who is your political opposite, that can be quite taxing and exhausting. So not only do you sound small and cute and happy and upbeat and like you'd be a fun companion to sit next to on a long car ride, you actually have the political leanings that are kind of rare these days for a woman who's still single.
Yeah, I'm pretty opinionated. I'm German. I have very thick German blood. I'm very opinionated about everything. Yeah, I mean, it's just common sense. I think anyone that's paying attention is going to see, close to where I'm at. So. Well,
what's your explanation on how you're single now? Do we give out your age or whatever?
Yeah, you can. I don't really care. I mean, I have nothing to hide. It's just, I don't know. I don't care. You've already blabbed about where I live. So.
Yeah. So how are you single now? If you're so awesome, how do you explain being in the middle ages here and single?
Yeah. I work a lot, and I don't know. I think I'm pretty just opinionated. I don't really socialize very much. Like I don't go out. If I do go out, it's alone, and I push a lot of people, away, not in a bad way, but discourage. I have given my phone number out, and I guess maybe it's part of society, right? Like I gave my phone number to someone. He's a little bit younger than me, and just to see, what he's going to say. And of course he starts talking about my underwear, and I say, is this the kind of conversation that you have with people you just met? I mean, is this what you say? And so I think people just don't understand anymore what respect is, or just being normal in society. What do you talk about? And he's not a bad guy. I'm not trying to put him down. That was his icebreaker, and I guess television has conditioned a lot of people, or maybe video games or something. I don't really know.
All right. Well, Samantha, you never answered the question. What's going on with your underwear? I'm kidding. I don't want to know. But listen, I am not giving out your number.
I wear?
Yeah, right. I am not giving out your number. Is that okay, or should I start connecting you with randos?
You can. You can give it
That's so
out.
weird.
I
can't.
really
I'm not
care.
doing that. I'm not doing it. Can you just come to
Okay.
like the next event and promise me you're going to come to the next event? And if they want to meet you, they can come there.
I can try for sure. Yeah, because sure I can do that. But you know, I am older and I'm not like I don't wear a bunch of makeup and stuff. I'm not like I guess a typical female. I'm pretty plain, you know. You saw me.
You're doing a terrible job describing yourself.
You tried to ignore me, but I didn't let you do that. No.
She's short, she's top heavy, and she's about my age. That's all we need to know. Samantha, thank you very much. I'm out of time here.
All right, no worries. Bye.
That's the great Samantha in Dallas. All right, coming up next, Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express, who has some inside info here on Jasmine Crockett, her polling numbers, and the real possibility of her being challenged in an upcoming election. Stick around for that on the James Show. News Talk 820. And don't call me about Samantha. 800-288-9227, as long as it's not about Samantha. Chris Putnam from Dallas Express next. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. All right, I think people are just trolling me now. Welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. And yes, I specifically said don't try and send me an email or Facebook message hooking up with Samantha. And then I go to break, and about 30, 45 seconds into break, this is what my email box looks like. It's just the first 30 seconds of Love Connection over here. It's just, come on, people.
Welcome to Love Connection, where old-fashioned romance meets modern-day technology, where you hear all the intimate details of a first date. Sometimes our dates have a happy ending. And some other times, there's just an ending.
What does that mean?
But it's always unpredictable when two strangers meet, trying to make that love connection. And now, here's our host, Chuck Woolery.
Yeah, calm down, people. There's apps for that. You don't need a radio host for a hookup. All right, now joining me from Dallas Express, DallasExpress.com, your favorite alternative news source. Actually, why are we even calling it alternative these days? It has replaced the Dallas Morning News for many enterprising information seekers out there. Chris Putnam, welcome back to the show.
Hey, James, good to hear from you.
All right, I was going to talk to you about Jacksboro and a couple other stories first, but then you kind of slipped to me before the show that you have some inside polling info on North Texas' favorite legislator, Jasmine Crockett.
Yeah, not so much polling info as campaign finance info. And, you know, you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about Sweet Jasmine. I call her Sweet Jasmine. And, you know, just the fact that a lot of people, you know, think she's stupid, and she's actually not.
No.
And so I had the occasion to visit with a couple of friends from DC that are they represent one of the biggest super PACs in the country, and of course they're doing a tour right now across Texas, looking at all these races, and trying to figure out where they want to make investments for this upcoming primary season.
They call it investments, huh?
Well, where they want to spend their money, obviously, which candidates they want to bet on.
It is an investment.
Yeah, for sure. I know firsthand, as you know. And so, we obviously get around to talking about Jasmine because, the question is, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in particular, like, who's the single legislator that needs to be targeted? And I think most rational, critically thinking people would tell you it's, Congresswoman Crockett. But, as you know, this tour that she's on, this national media tour, is purposeful. You create a huge small donor network by doing all these appearances on things like Jimmy Kimmel and all of these other national shows. And just last quarter, she raised almost $1.7 million and now has $2.6 million on hand. That is literally 7 months before the calendar turns when voters start paying attention, which gives you another, couple of quarters to raise money. And I will tell you, as somebody that ran that in 2020, the largest Republican primary race in the country, of $5 million on my side alone, that is a tremendous amount of money on hand this early.
How do you explain that? Just a small donor network adding up? Is this organic, or does she have some big money men that are throwing at her?
Well, she'll obviously have the lobby money. In incumbents, they have their own PAC. The House, both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, they have their own PAC, and members of Congress tithe into it. Think of it as like an incumbent protection insurance policy. And then, they're able to draw out of those funds if they're in competitive races. So it's not only she'll have all the lobbyist money, which she has a considerable amount of lobbyist money, including hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of PAC money, which she claims she would never.
It's my understanding that pile of money is usually the incumbent protection pile of money, but also if you're an incumbent who strays from the plantation and you start voting away from the party's interests, that's also the money that's going to be taken away from you and giving to someone who's preferable.
It's pretty rare, but yeah, there are examples of that. They're more rare.
So what are these?
Point is,
what are the politicos saying? Is there really a credible challenge to her if she's raised this much money?
A lot of people aren't going to like my answer. The answer is no, not right now. There's one other candidate, Sheldon, and seems like a reasonable fellow. I've never met him personally. I know a little bit about his financial situation in terms of, the amount of money he's raised. But what I don't think people understand is the scale. I ran against a 30-year incumbent in the heart of the defense industry, and she had $600,000 on hand at the time that we filed. Jasmine has $2.6 million with 2 quarters to go. And wow. It's a real, it's hard to beat the money. Right or wrong.
Well, I don't think anybody's heartbroken over that. We all kind of just assumed this was a dedicated blue district anyway. So, I mean, I don't think anyone's really surprised by that. It may be a little discouraging how calcified she is in her position, but I don't think that's really much of a shocker.
Well, to me, it's not even a question about whether it's blue or not blue. I just like to have like a sane person that, doesn't think that, that you're violating somebody's constitutional rights who's in the country illegally, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like understands, just basically understands our laws and our constitution.
Well, I also I kind of like the people who are just playing the game instead of the true believers, because if you're ideological a squish, then perhaps you'll start voting better in the future when your incentives change.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. The thing that's always interesting with her, it's just constantly fascinating to me, is how she turns on and off the ghetto. Like it's just, it seems like every time we get closer to the weekend, here come the reels on X, and the language gets saltier and crustier. And of course, I think maybe most people don't know. I mean, maybe most people in her district don't know that it is pure theater. It's an act. The woman went to private schools her entire life. She's completely articulate. and she was on Kimmel the other night. So contrast what you saw on Kimmel the other night with some of this stuff you'll see like in the last couple of days just on social media. It's hilarious.
All right, all good stuff. Stick with me through the break. We're going to continue with Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express. Couple other big stories. The Texas House has passed a bill that sounds like it would regulate memes. And by regulate, I mean outlaw memes without a special disclaimer. And that just seems too wild to be true. And then on top of that, we have a big scandal here in North Texas. What the heck is going on in Jacksboro? Police chief now been taken in custody, and the deputies are all dismissed as well. So we'll find out from Chris Putnam from Dallas Express next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hello, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We continue with Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express. It's a local newspaper here focusing on North Texas. That's a great alternative to the legacy media, which is dying out for obvious reasons because they have problems that the Dallas Express doesn't have. Now, let's look at some of the other stories going on around in North Texas. Chris, what the heck is going on in Jacksboro, this sleepy little town that has a police chief and 10 officers? They just had their police department suspended here. The sheriff's office has come in and taken over, and they're now responding to the calls. And I can't find out why or what happened, and I don't think anyone knows yet.
Well, there's a little bit of information out there. So apparently back in January, around holiday season, there was some sort of incident between certain members of the police department and the city manager. The city manager showed up to some event or events intoxicated, and
what?
The officers, yeah,
okay,
and the officers went through what they believe was the appropriate protocol, switching on their body cams and things like that, and starting to interview the city manager. And evidently, that was not well received. And as you know, I mean, effectively, your police chief is employed by your city manager. I also happen to be a city councilman, deputy mayor, so I know how that works too. And so it's a really interesting situation. In fact, I believe that there is, as we sit here today, there are no police officers remaining.
Right.
In Jacksboro.
Yeah, I got that in a great report I heard on or I read on DallasExpress.com. But the
and one of the officer and I apologize because I can't remember which association exactly, maybe the Municipal Police Officers Association of Texas, something like that, has formally requested that city manager be relieved of duty. And look, small town politics, I don't know what's happened here. But
who's the good guys? Are these cops, were they unjustly fired, or did they actually, because it sounded like they were doing the right thing and now they're being punished because they made this guy look like a jerk? And so I don't know if they got kicked out of their jobs because they did something bad or because they did something good.
Well, I think that's the question, right? And again, small town politics, there's a lot of crazy things that go on. I've seen a lot of really interesting nonsense through the years in different communities, and so it's kind of hard to qualify. If in fact the guy was intoxicated and acting inappropriately, and they were just doing their jobs, then I don't know how you can fault them. I once got pulled over by an officer in my own town, leaving a city council meeting for running a stoplight. And he's like, "Where are you coming from?" I'm like, "A city council meeting." But I didn't say, "Hey, you know who I am? You're not allowed to do this." I took the ticket and went and paid it.
You know who I am? Well,
yeah, that's the last thing you do. I don't know how people haven't learned that by now, watching enough YouTube.
Well, and here's where it starts to leave the realm of believable, and it almost feels like we're living in a simulation here, because the sheriff that had to come in and kick the police chief out and send all 10 officers walking, his name is Sheriff T-Bob Hogger.
You can't make that up.
T-Bob Hogger is your sheriff in Jack County. Is this a TV show? Are we in the Matrix and the writers are just getting sloppy for USA season 246 or whatever we're in?
It's the redneck Matrix.
Is it like Boss Hogg, except it's Hogger, and his name's T-Bob and Hogger. So if people make fun of us for being like the Dukes of Hazzard, we're kind of earning it in this one.
I mean, that might be the greatest sheriff's name ever.
I know. No wonder he got elected. What, are you going to vote for Ralph or Jeff or whoever else was running against him?
It's the best ballot name of all time.
All right.
Running for sheriff.
The other story that has me slapping my forehead really hard is I read on the Texas Scorecard, our mutual friends, the Texas House has passed Dade Phelan's bill that was supposed to regulate AI-generated deepfakes, but the wording is so vague that it sounds like it would regulate or outlaw memes.
Without a disclosure. Yeah, without some form of disclosure that it's, a political thing, I guess.
Okay, so you do know about this. So it's House Bill 366, and it doesn't just apply to artificial intelligence. It also it applies to any image, audio, or video that did not occur in reality. So if I Photoshop or parody or anything to a real image, I have to put this disclaimer on it, or I could get $100 fine.
It's insane. Like, why are we wasting our time with stuff like this? These politicians are so thin-skinned, and that leadership crowd in the Texas House, is, I'll say it, they're corrupt. They are. They all do business together. They're the ones that conspire with Democrats in order to, continue to retain their friends in leadership positions so they control the agendas and monetize their roles in the Texas House. And they don't like public criticism. It's that simple. And I think it's disgusting.
Well, Chris, have you seen the Rhino list? Brian Harrison and I collaborated to put together a list and a map of districts of all the people that side, the 36 congressional representatives in the state house that side and vote with the Democrats on all these issues. Have you seen that?
Sure. Yeah, I know who they are, of course. Yeah.
Well, you probably have them memorized, but help me get this list out. Yeah, you probably do know them all, don't you? It's a nice side effect of being an inside political guy. So I have the list out for people listening. If you want to get a copy of the list, in fact, I got an email for a copy earlier in the show today. I have the unofficial Rhino list that I've been working on with Brian Harrison, and I'll be happy to pass that along because I don't see any other way we fix these things like Dade Phelan and Burrows and all these other turncoats.
Yeah, I won't comment on anybody's specifically. What I will say is we play the same game every session, and they partner as you described very close with Democrats. And my only thing there is, look, if the shoe was on the other foot, do you really think that those Democrats in the Texas House would be collaborating with Republicans? There isn't a chance in hell. But we do it, so that a certain group of people can remain in leadership and control the agenda. And then we play this game where we run out the clock on conservative legislation every single session, and then pretend like we're out of time to pass a handful of like truly conservative bills, and everybody gets frustrated all over again. It's literally like Groundhog Day.
I know. And then we got to have 26 special sessions. And hey, my Team Blue listeners out there, don't you think it's a little disconcerting that when the corrupt politicians get bought off by the moneyed power brokers that they tend to support your philosophy and not mine? Doesn't that sound a little weird to you? Doesn't that raise any suspicions or cognitive dissonance in your head? Thank you very much, Chris Putnam. I appreciate it. Check out his website, everyday, DallasExpress.com. Thank you, sir. Don't look now, but I hear India and Pakistan are on the verge of going to war. Just two big nuclear powers. What could possibly go wrong? We'll get some details coming up next from Dr. Jeffrey Brodur from Rigaku on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, hey there. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I'm taking location suggestions. If you want to nominate a place or you know a good place to have the next James Show listener meetup, it's not just so you can meet me, it's so y'all can meet each other. And so 50 of y'all can meet Samantha, apparently. But I'm looking for a place that has a WBAP listener that's either the owner or runs the joint. So manager, general manager, whatever that means. I just want to go to a place that knows us and loves us and will be welcome with open arms. And plus, I would like to keep it in the family. If we're going to give some free promotion and business to someone, it needs to be someone in our family. So if you know a place, I am not picky about where it's at. I've already done Richardson and Plano and Fort Worth, and we did Dallas last weekend. So let's look for any place. I'll even repeat a city there if I find a good place. Just let me know. Send me an email, james@wbap.com. Or find me on Facebook. You know how to find me. All right. Are India and Pakistan on the verge of war? There was a big terror attack last week, and things have just sort of escalated since then. We haven't talked about this yet. I didn't think it would be that big of a deal. But for a little primer here, this is an AP report about the terror attack that happened last week.
A deadly gun attack in the disputed Kashmir region has spiked tensions between India and Pakistan, raising fears of an armed conflict between the two enemies. Both countries have nuclear weapons, but these are intended to stop wars, not start them. India has a no first use policy, meaning it will not use nuclear weapons first. Pakistan hasn't ruled out using nuclear weapons if it feels its existence is under threat.
Jeez.
But it can't afford to take on India. India is bigger, richer, and more powerful, and Pakistan has already lost 3 conventional wars against its neighbor. However, what Pakistan has done is call international attention to this crisis by saying a military attack by India is imminent. It hasn't presented any evidence, and it put a deadline saying that it could happen within 24 to 36 hours. That time has now passed, and there's still no sign of retaliation from India. There's growing concern among the international community that the situation could get even more out of hand.
All right, so that was from the AP. Let's ask our foreign policy expertise, Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur. He's got expertise in chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear weapons. Rigaku Analytical Devices is his day job, but he's going to help us out there. So the 36-hour deadline passed. Nothing happened. Are we done with this?
Are you referring to Pakistan and India?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so same movie, different day is the way I would describe it. Both countries have a relationship with the United States, and they can't afford to use a nuclear weapon. India has a unique characteristic in that they have a nuclear weapon and never signed the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. U.S. has sort of turned a blind eye to that because we want them to be their friend, and they are a good ally. No, I think what we're doing is rattling our sabers and beating our chest here. The challenge, though, is that you have 2 nuclear powers that are on the same chessboard, and we don't want egos to prevail. We need a third party to sort of diffuse this thing. It started out April 22nd with a terrorist attack coming from Pakistan in terms of the open source material into the Indian sort of area, governed area of Kashmir, which is sort of it's an anomaly. It's a state, non-state. It's neither of the above. It's between Pakistan and India. Neither one of them really want it, but they do kind of want it when they want it. And so it'll be just fine. This is not going to end up in a nuclear war. I don't think there are enough adults in the room in terms of the international community that'll settle this down.
Well, my entire life, Dr. Brodeur, I have been expecting the people of Kashmir to go to the ballot box and vote on whether or not they want to be a part of Pakistan or India. And that vote has always been dangled in front of the face like it's going to happen. And it never has. What's up with that?
Yeah, that's a good political question. It's sort of outside of my lane. I can't comment on that. I will just tell you that, we sort of have the same problem with Puerto Rico, right?
Yeah, that's probably a good comparison. Although we're not fighting with another country for them, that's a weird homeostasis that they've put themselves in. And so every time I go read on this, it is on a fairly regular basis that there's a shooting war. There's hot bullets flying across that border, and it seems so odd that it never flares up into anything big, but it's been so consistently violent.
Yeah, for decades, really. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's all small arms. And it was actually the national security justification for India to proceed with their nuclear weapons program. And they've got an inventory. They have a doctrine. It's militarized. It would not be a good day for Pakistan if India decided to unleash all the military muscle that they've got. They would put up a good fight, but no, India would they would likely succeed, but I don't think either one of them really want it. I think the nuclear weapon is just sort of a poker playing card to get the opponent to sort of back down, if you will.
Well, I mean, does Pakistan have a chance to beat India in a war no matter what?
You know what? I think Pakistan would run out of bullets before India would run out of people.
Right, because they're so outnumbered.
Yeah.
However, they have the past connection with Bangladesh on the other side. And if you add up those two countries, it doesn't equal India just yet, but we're talking 450 million people or so. That'd be bigger than the United States, the combined effort of Bangladesh and Pakistan. Could they come up with an ally or two and actually challenge India?
That's an interesting question. I think the powers that be that counter the United States, read that as Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, which...
Yep.
Right. We talked about a couple of Chinese soldiers involved in Ukraine, and they've actually done interviews and published those online, so we can confirm that. But I think they would come to the aid, but I don't know that it would be much of a fight, honestly. The U.S. has a closer relationship with India than Pakistan. Our navies exercise together on a regular basis. Our federal governments exchange information regularly on a basis. In terms of this match, honestly, I don't think it's going to come to a nuclear war. But I think India's got the upper hand,
right?
No matter how you address this.
And they do such a good job helping us fix our computers and whatnot. Coming up next, we're going to continue with Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur from Rigaku, because I have a few more foreign policy issues we got to deal with. Ukraine says it's close to a mineral deal. Does that mean Ukraine and Russia are closer to a ceasefire? What's going on with the Iran Houthi mess? What's going on with Israel, Gaza? We'll ask Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur from Rigaku about it all next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3, 800-288-9227. If you have a question for my guest, we're continuing with Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur from Rigaku. He's an expert in chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. And moving through the foreign policy scene, what's the latest on the mineral deal with Ukraine? Because I feel like that is going to be packaged with the Ukraine-Russia ceasefire. Like, you can't really get one without the other. So if we're going to get a mineral deal, I feel like this thing might wrap itself up.
Yeah, no, that's a good comparison. And it was signed yesterday. And here's my analogy to you. If you're a college freshman, would you order your class ring? Probably not, but that's what we've really done. We're expecting that there's going to be a ceasefire and then a peace deal to allow the U.S. and companies to go in and explore mineral rights in Ukraine.
So why did we have to have a war before Ukraine would cut us a deal on mineral rights?
It has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with the business practices of Ukraine. That's a polite way of saying that, the Biden family are beneficiaries of that sort of process. I think our president wanted to go in with a mineral rights deal initially to recoup some of the $500 billion that we invested in military aid. And hold Ukraine responsible for paying us back. There's got to be something in it for the taxpayers for supporting Ukraine's independence. But honestly, as I take a look at the battlefield, Ukraine does not have the upper hand, and Putin is not going to stop, and he's not going to sign a ceasefire or peace deal until he's positioned to the military advantage.
So what is Ukraine's incentive to keep going in this? Because it seems like if they have a chance to quit, that they should.
Yeah, they're on life support. I agree.
Right. I just don't. I don't see any way they win this. You're going to have to give up something. You're not going to beat Russia in a land war. They have too much resources and population and military over you, and we're not just going to keep pumping this up when it's not even a winnable situation.
My assessment is Putin will continue to send soldiers into Ukraine until Ukraine runs out of bullets.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to the next hot spot we have going on, the Iran Houthi stuff that's all tied together. Have they stopped shooting at ships that are passing through?
No, and they're making their targets every day. Department of Defense has unleashed to the 10th degree Air Force and naval power to target and neutralize the entire al-Houthi infrastructure. And they're doing an amazing job. They've probably done 4 years of work in about 3 weeks.
Well, look at that.
They're doing a great job. So if the Secretary of Defense is listening right now, from Jeff to you, pat on the back. You're doing a great job. And to our armed services, thank you very much for keeping us safe.
Well, I had the weird headline float through my social media about the airplane that just fell off the deck into, what was that, the Red Sea last week?
Yeah, and as a former soldier, a retired soldier, I could make a Navy joke out of this, but I won't. It's understandable when you have an aircraft carrier that is banking hard one direction or another, a hard left or a hard right, trying to mitigate the aim point from an al-Houthi missile. And somebody forgets to chain down one of the fighter aircraft, and it slips overboard. It appears to me, based on everything that I've read, to be just a casualty of combat, not necessarily anybody's fault or a mistake.
Well,
But
here's the cute part of it was the Houthis claimed that their drone attacks had knocked a fighter jet off the aircraft. But your story sounds like Jeff didn't pull the emergency brake before he got out of the cockpit.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, good on El Houthi for coming up with a campaign plan and information management plan. But no. I mean, that was a nice try. But next page, please.
Well, it's just how would a swarm of drones knock a F-18 fighter jet off the deck of the Harry S. Truman?
So I don't know that that's feasible.
Exactly.
The U.S. Navy has got an array of counter drone measures, active and passive defense. Fighter aircraft are nimble when they're in the air. I don't understand. I guess if everybody was asleep on the deck, but that doesn't happen. I mean, I love the Army, and the Navy is a great supporter of the Navy. I'm the Army, but I've never known them to be asleep on the job. They're professionals, and they're great at what they do.
It doesn't even sound like it's physically possible. Like drones knocking a jet off of aircraft carrier. Clearly a made-up story, so I'm glad you backed that up. Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur from Rigaku, I appreciate your expertise. Thank you for doing an extra segment with me today, sir.
Good day, sir. I appreciate you.
All right. All right, boy, we covered a whole lot there. If you want to see more of what Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur does, it's RIGAKU, Rigaku Analytical Devices. Coming up next, 2 more stories of Texas teachers being way too friendly with your kids. Details coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. You know, I spent a big chunk of that break there sending the Rhino list to people who are asking for it. If you haven't heard me talk about this yet, myself and Brian Harrison, the state rep out of the Midlothian area, have compiled the list of people, Republicans who you sent to the Austin State House, who there's 36 of them, who vote with the Democrats on so many of these issues, including the Speaker of the House, including the agenda, including the terrible budget, including all these bills that you don't like. There's just a handful of guys that are the problem. They tell you that they're going to support your principles when you're voting for them, and then they go down to Austin and they do exactly the opposite. I have the list. Brian and I made the list. We have a map. You can see if this is one of your districts and you need to do something, because really it's not that hard to primary and unseat a state representative, especially in these smaller jurisdictions. You have a lot more power than you think you do, especially over these guys compared to like getting a member of Congress out of D.C. Well, that's a lot more difficult. Controlling who's going to be the next president, you have almost no say in that. But you have a little bit of power, and I'd like to see you flex it so we don't have to go through this in 2 years with the next state session. So let me know if you want that list. I'll be happy to pass it around. I have two more bad stories here, and I do not delight in this. I just want to stress the context that I don't do this every day, but I could do this every day. The first one is out of Odessa. There's a guy on the staff. He's not technically a teacher. He's a security guard. Now, in Odessa, there's a public charter school serving kindergarten through 8th grade students. And so this is where it just gets plain nasty. You know, there's almost the exciting stories about some 18-year-old guy who hooks up with like a 23-year-old teacher, and it's creepy and it's gross, and you know, it's kind of a weird crossing of lines there, but it almost has like a fun little Stacy's mom sort of vibe to it. But when you're talking about middle school, now it's just gross, and this guy just needs to get thrown in the wood chipper. In fact, we haven't had to fire up the wood chipper for a minute. Y'all got it? There he goes. Yeah, Mike Traina had to go get some gas for it because we ran out earlier, but just throw him in the wood chipper. Maurice, there you go. All right, we'll get a new security guard for this charter school. But this one's terrible because it's 5 counts of sexual assault of a child. 1 count of improper relationship between educator and student, but that's just kind of what's put on top of it. 6 felony charges, but he's 31 years old. This was a repeated thing. This happened on more than one occasion. It wasn't just like one time this guy got a little handsy with a kid. There seems to be some sort of ongoing, repeated relationship. And man, some people just can't get to hell fast enough, can they? Good Lord. And then the other one, this is even weirder. This is an Austin area teacher. And I know usually we make jokes about Austin, but this isn't funny. This is a situation where a teacher is accused of taking pictures of his children. All I know is they're under the age of 14. I don't know how old these people are. I just know that the charge says under the age of 14. He has thousands of photos of his female students, and he takes them, he puts them through an AI filter and turns them into basically AI created porn. Now, I guess the most libertine out there could be like, well, this is a victimless crime. Now, my libertarianness starts at this one. Fire up the wood chipper for this guy too. I know you didn't actually hurt anybody. I know you didn't actually touch anybody. But you're sick, and the world would be better off without you. Into the wood chipper you go. So now I got to worry about that. You got to worry about people getting pictures of your kids, even if they're not dirty pictures or suggestive pictures. It could be pictures of them fully clothed, and they can take them and they can roll them through these AI programs and, I don't know, take their clothes off or make them do other things. Boy, 2025 has some really cool things. I'm looking forward to getting my first drone delivery from Walmart. But this stuff is just evil and nasty and just terrible when you put it in the context of what are we trying to get out of libraries right now? Sexual related content. I mean, they try and make it like a gay or a trans issue, but I don't think anyone cares about the gay or trans part of it. I don't want teachers having secret sex talks, even in the heterosexual angle with kids, especially elementary and middle school kids. You nasty people. The devil is everywhere, including our schools. All right, that's going to about do it for the James Show today. Sorry to leave you on such a gross note, but as a parent, this is the kind of stuff that just stops me in my tracks, and I'm like, oh, they've got to hear about this one. So keep an eye out there. In the meantime, if you need more James Show action, I'm about to get out of here, go put up the podcast. If you want the Rhino list, let me know. Send me an email, james@wbap.com. I'll be happy to send you the list of turncoat Republicans in the State House and the map where their districts are to see if you're in it. I'm looking for a venue for the next James Show listener meet and greet where you can meet me and really, more importantly, meet each other. Or for half of you, meet Samantha. Get over it, people. But just let me know. Same contact information at james@wbap.com, or I get more messages than anything else by people just finding James Parker on Facebook. So thank you very much for hanging out today. I'll see you again tomorrow for the Great Friday show, where we're going to have Alan West is going to be on the show with some last-minute tips. Give it up for the former Congressman, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. He's got some last-minute advice before you go into Saturday's local. So come on back tomorrow. I'm James Parker. This has been The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.